For those of you that aren't familiar with Bespoke, we are a global recruitment agency set up by architects for architects. We've got offices in London, New York, Los Angeles, Melbourne and Sydney. I'll share some insights from our global community on the sudden change in the sector. I'd like to acknowledge the audience today includes owners, practice managers, individual architects, all of who will have been affected by COVID-19, and some who may have sadly lost their roles and been made redundant. To give you some framework around Bespoke's perspective, we are talking to employers and architects daily, and they adjust to this fast changing environment. In Australia alone, we've spoken with over 500 people in the last few weeks, just to give you some indication of the scope. Today, we'd like to provide some support, some hope, and some practical tips and insights so far. So, observations 4 weeks in. We have never seen so much change in such a short period of time. Prior to March, we could see strong activity across most sectors, including commercial, infrastructure, education, workplace, hospitality, landscape, private residential, and even a good return in the multi-residential activity. We had live roles across practices of all sizes in all sectors. Most firms were reporting feeling very busy, and many firms had returned to a pattern of growth after the multi-res slowdown. There had been an increase in practices hiring contract and casual employees over the past 4 months, which is a common pattern in a recovering busy sector. Most practices were 3 months from ending on a strong financial year. This has, of course, been seriously disrupted. We literally came to work on Monday, the 16th of March, and within days, almost all recruitment went on hold. Our whole industry had to undertake a sudden and large-scale shift to work from home. However, most firms reported still being busy with live committed work. Some sectors were hit very hard across the retail and residential space, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. We heard from government clients that they were to push current invoices through as quickly as possible rather than waiting for the end of the invoice period. So I think making sure you're on top of your billing and cash will be really key to all businesses through this difficult period. National, state and local governments are under pressure to identify and fast-track projects that are shovel-ready. This includes projects that previously were rejected when we were trying to protect a surplus across cities and regional areas. We've had great updates from the Institute this week, pushing planning processes along. Be ready to bid. One thing we've always seen in a downturn and slowdown, from our perspective, is the demand for submissions coordinators, business development skills, as they are key roles in your team when the market returns. So globally, 4 weeks in London, the market was in a similar state as Sydney and stopped at a similar time frame as Australia. Sydney, London, Melbourne seem to be going through similar thresholds as shutdowns in terms of practices and projects pipeline. The government have implemented emergency measures like furlough, where the government plans pays out an amount of an employee's salary, which is a lifeline to practices and hopefully protects the sector to a degree. Construction continues for now in the UK, although there is some debate around this, I believe. Some practices like Grimshaw and HTA, to name a few, have moved to design and 3D printing of vital medical supplies, which is great. In New York, our office has been working remote since the 7th of March, despite the devastating state of the city with the impact of COVID-19. Surprisingly, practices are optimistic that they will be back at work by May the 1st. We're only aware of 4 practices who've made redundancies so far. Practices seem to think the projects are still moving and seem able to cope with the reduction in the work for this period. All non-essential construction has stopped outside of the education, infrastructure and affordable housing sectors. Design work on government projects has been stopped, which is under some debate. Studios are using time to focus on projects around sustainability and innovation, which is great to hear as well. And they also seem to be really fast adapters in New York. One of our clients won a new job last week via Zoom, which is amazing. Los Angeles have reacted faster than other parts of the US. We feel like they're in a pretty good position. California and Washington State were the most aggressive in terms of social distancing. In LA, they're quite well adapted to working remotely, as well as lots of people don't commute into offices due to the horrific traffic. There are lots of practices also who cover San Francisco as well, so they're used to using remote meetings. Ultimately, projects have gone on hold, but they're hopeful that they can win new work through this period as well. Federal and state agencies are taking measures across the US to provide relief and support firms with federal stimulus packages, disaster loans and resources for employers. Firms are contributing where they can, donating extra masks and creating new masks like big architecture. Both of our US offices have really spoken about the architecture community coming together, and they've been doing weekly roundtable discussions facilitated by us, which they are all enjoying opportunity to share solutions, workshop ideas on a Friday afternoon over a glass of wine. New Zealand practices have felt the shock of full lockdown. However, they were prepared. Lots of projects are on hold. Market was strong in New Zealand, particularly across infrastructure, residential and retail, and lots of education projects are now being pushed through, which is good to hear. They're positive that the projects are not cancelled and just on hold, and optimistic for a fast recovery as they have reacted really quickly. Globally, most practices who were in the process of hiring for strategic roles have kept this process moving and have continued interviewing, as they often take 6 to 12 months anyway. There are lots of challenges for our sector. A few of these that we'll go through are minimising redundancies. We have seen firms make redundancies. We've also speaking daily to people who have been made redundant and offering them as much help as possible. The process of undertaking redundancies remotely has also been a new challenge and added complexity. I would say on the whole, the numbers aren't as large as we have seen in the past. Typically we're seeing 2 to 8 people, which is not as bad as previous downturns we've seen at this stage. And I also want to say that at the moment, many firms, including large studios, have not made any redundancies. And as I mentioned, New York City and LA, we're only aware of a few practices making redundancies so far. Hopefully with the new JobKeeper allowance in Australia and other levels of support to businesses, there will be less need for redundancies, and where necessary, studios will explore reduced hours and other levers. I think business continuity is something people need to consider, and in case anyone missed Fiona Martin's excellent article last week on the ACA website, one area that I hadn't even thought to was the possibility of losing a staff member or someone becoming ill with COVID. We all hope this is very unlikely, but realise it may happen and it could happen quickly. Do you have plans to ensure key projects information is being shared and a plan for succession of the business? A big challenge is uncertain pipeline. While most practices have a level of active work and are comfortable for the next few months, there is of course uncertainty at this point about the future, and some projects have gone on hold already. For those who remain busy or who win new work through this period and need to resource and actually grow their teams, interviewing and onboarding new starters while working remotely is a new set of challenges as well for most businesses. We'll gather some more information on this and have an article with detailed advice in the next few weeks. Practices are interviewing via Zoom and FaceTime already, and just as it was unimaginable 4 weeks ago that our whole industry would be working from home, studios are now looking ahead to the new world and how they will manage their resources. We're speaking to a client at the moment who is keen to hire a landscape architect, and they're already making plans of how to onboard remotely. We have been doing this with international clients setting up practices in Sydney for some time. Often we deal with HR and business owners in the UK who are setting up teams remotely, and this has been done successfully. I think wellbeing and morale is also something that most people I've spoken to are mentioning, which is positive and important to be considering for all members of your team and colleagues through this time. Managing the return to the office is also going to be a new challenge. When will this happen and how? Many of us would really love to return to the office, and of course we will at some point. This will be gradual, staggered return. Will it be those that have caught and recovered from COVID-19 be the first to return? When we return, will work patterns be changed forever? One client I spoke to pondered that they might reduce their commercial lease and spend the savings on helping people set up their offices from home. The workplace could become more of a collaborative studio space and a social hub for the team. After acknowledging some of the challenges, I think adaptation is going to be really key for all of us, and hopefully as a creative industry, one that we lead and excel in. It has been amazing to see how quickly people and whole studios are adapting to working from home in large numbers. Many are finding some benefits to this: less commute time, neighbourhood strolls at lunch, probably especially the ones that aren't homeschooling, popping on a slow-cooked meal in the afternoon and getting more work done. One of our local clients who is busy in the education sector is consciously using the former commute time to talk to staff one-on-one, not something that was easy before in an open plan office. And now they can connect and get deeper insight into each person in the team. We did hear also from some design and construct workplace companies that firms are fast-tracking some fit-out projects. While workplaces are empty, instead of working on half the building, they can do everything in one line. Another adaptation, teams pitching work via Zoom and holding consultant meetings via Zoom. As I mentioned, the New York office had a client last week that did the whole pitch via Zoom and won a job. Very positive news. I think interviewing for new roles, we'll do another session on this as well with the tips and tricks. There are some advantages to this. A big advantage is being able to diarise interview times more easily between busy business leaders, as they can do this from anywhere on a video call from their phone. We've had several studios pushing forward with hiring across different regions, and remote interviews are working really effectively. I think onboarding new hires is something we will need to adapt to. While practices are consolidating, some clients are in the process of this, and it's involving couriering workstations and PCs to people's home offices, as well as coordinating a set of VC meetings with team members and leaders. Really strong web-based HR systems will be useful for this, with policies easily accessible for someone new in the team to download. And there is some good news. I think the free advice being shared really widely, including Institute website, fortnightly updates, video conferencing, networking sessions, the ACA reports and articles and surveys, lots of really useful industry press. I particularly like the Urban Developer newsletter, and also I think McKinsey Insights and Analysis for Business Management has been really good. They've got a really big focus on responses to COVID-19 and practical tips for navigating businesses through this. And they sort of come in daily, so you can, while you've got time to read, I think it's quite good to upskill and knowledge search. Our team is available for free advice. All of our consultants are available on mobile and Zoom. We're mainly spending our time with candidates at this point, helping them improve their folios, CVs, keeping them up to date with options and reassuring people that this will pass, as some firms are still reporting plenty of live work but noted concerns about their future pipeline. This might sound a bit crazy, but WIDAC did a virtual dance class last week, but I think those sorts of things are really great to network and connect and pump those endorphins. Government planning departments are also pushing projects through, planning and releasing funding for projects across states. Extended construction hours is also helping on this front. Something that people might not have thought of yet is the amazing candidates as this crisis hit Australia. There were lots of people who were ready to return from maternity or paternity leave, architects who had just moved back from Australia from living and working abroad, architects who had accepted a role but then the offer was retracted just before commencement. We did have one practice capitalise on this, and they were able to attract a candidate who had turned them down previously as a second option. There are lots of great architects looking for contract and full-time roles at the moment, and if you have a long strategic view for your business, you could make the most out of this market and build the best team. We're keeping lists of candidates, including those best set up to work from home effectively with their own software, who've done CAD testing and are fully vetted, ready to work in casual or permanent capacity. Practices are also considering starting people part-time so they can secure them now and then increase hours when projects are live in a few months and they've got more work next year. Overall, it's important to remember that Australia will remain a popular place for tourism, business, headquarters, immigrants, hopefully scientific investment and environmental innovation. And a few other tips from people we're speaking with. I think people are really craving connection and conversation in these uncertain times. Keep calling, particularly for those people who live alone or with less of a support base. This includes your staff and clients. This is a great time for building better relationships. Over-communicate, trust and thank people for their work. If you're a business owner or a manager, be clear and transparent about challenges you face and how you will deal with them. Take care of your own mental and physical health. Wellbeing would be a great future topic, I think. Look for the hidden magic in the experience. Lots of people we speak with have been acknowledging the negative financial impact this external force has had on them. And then in the same sentence, they mention something great about more time painting, cooking, innovating. This will pass. I think adapting, winning work remotely, maintain, look after your team, remind people to use the employment assistance programs if you have them, encourage people to upskill in their spare time, stay focused on client service. I mean, look after the projects you do have, go above and beyond with your service, be positive, keep up morale. We're all in this together. Architecture will be one of the first sectors to recover. A couple of thoughts to leave everyone with. What happens when we send our best, brightest, most creative people home, forced outside of regular routine and comfort zones, with hopefully more time to walk and think? Perhaps there'll be an outbreak of new ideas in 2021. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much, Krista, for that. What I've been doing is just moderating the chat box. There have been a couple of questions which have come in online to me via email, and I just want to, before I do that, I've had a number of emails from you just to say, could we have access to the previous recordings? So on the chat box there, you should be able to see the, there's a link that I've just put into that chat box, which has the recordings of all of our previous lean-in sessions that we've done over the past couple of weeks. And we'll keep continually adding to that, including Krista's session today as well. But Krista, let's start with a question for you, if that's okay. And this comes to us from Carol Whitaker. Hi, Carol. We can see you on the screen. And the question to you, Krista, from Carol is this. What do you think the market will look like later in the year, once we've passed through COVID-19? What do you think the market will look like for hiring graduates? Carol's studying a Master of Architecture and will complete that in June. She has a background in graphic design and looking for a position on the Gold Coast, Brisbane area. What's your opinion on where the market will land for grads?
Look, it's a tough time, I guess, if you're graduating, because this is tough for everybody. And, you know, we don't really know how long this will pan out. I can't help thinking that with the government's JobKeeper going to September, that's probably something that they're thinking the threshold. I do think that there will be people coming out of some sort of, I think, you know, shock in the next 3 months maybe, and they'll start projects and maybe there'll be more stimulus. But I do think also for you particularly, if you've got a graphic background and you're a graduate, it's actually great because you've got different skills that you can take into a practice than someone else. And sometimes they get people to do, you know, helping with submissions, like I mentioned earlier, which might be a positive for you personally.
Okay, great stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, I've noticed as well, one of my colleagues has put up the details of Bespoke Careers contacts in the Sydney office and the Melbourne office as well. So if you do have any questions for Krista and you want to have a chat with her, their details are there on the screen. So you've got Sydney at bespokecareers.com and also the telephone numbers for both Melbourne and Sydney offices as well. If there are no, I don't see any other questions coming through at this stage. This is just a very brief lead-in today, so hopefully that has given you some level of comfort. Things aren't always doom and gloom. I believe when you look at the news, the media seem to constantly gravitate to the darker stories of the day, and this has given us a fair bit of hope and guidance for the future, which is great. So thank you very much, Krista. This will be recorded and is being recorded, and what we will do in the next 24 hours is just add it to our COVID-19 resource page as well. So thanks very much for joining, everybody. Hope that was just a good half an hour out of your day to get some positive messaging. Thanks, Krista. And we'll see you back, Krista, maybe yourself or your other colleague, Kate, to join us for the next couple of lean-ins as well as we move forward. But thanks, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you on Thursday at our next lean-in.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Bye.